Welcome to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
No, you don't understand. I've been dead for 35 years. Today is the day I live. Brad, the nobody.
I'm Kira,
I'm Kyle.
and we're talking about Lisa today.
Yes. So, we got a list of trigger warnings. If dark things and violence upsets you, that might be an issue.
Yeah.
Such things as murder, suicide, rape, abuse,
Yep.
involving children,
Yep. This is a very dark game.
and femicide.
Yeah.
Basically, the story of Lisa, it's an indie game series. It's a trilogy. And we really wanted to talk about it because it has some interesting stuff to say.
Yeah, it's a really good game.
It posits what if there was a world without women? It doesn't go well.
Yeah,
And
obviously.
it would have been very easy to do a very atrocious telling of this story.
Yeah.
It would have been very easy to make it a real misogynistic piece of crap. But it actually isn't.
No, it really isn't.
It's actually pretty forward thinking and progressive in the way it does this dark story, which it also does masterfully.
Yeah, it does it really well.
And we wanted to tell you this story. So if you haven't played the Lisa games, you don't feel like it, listen to us. If you do, listen to us anyway. Come on.
Yeah, what's wrong with you? Don't not listen to us.
Our podcast is perfect for people who are medium interested. Interested enough to listen, but not to actually go do themselves. Or those who are super interested and want all the content they can get. And that's when they come back to us.
Yeah, but these games are actually pretty hard.
True. So if you don't want to actually beat them,
Yeah.
although there are easy ways to, whatever. Let's delve into the story. So this is going to have a lot of backstory. And I hope you guys enjoy it. It's going to be very dark, though, so be prepared for that. And we can see why it's called Lisa.
Yep.
You ready for this, Kira?
Yep.
Anything you want to say before we begin?
It's just a really good story and a well-designed game. It also handles very mature topics in a very good way. And that's not something a lot of games do.
Do you want to go first, or should I?
You go first.
All right. The region known as Olathe existed within Kansas in the United States. Various forms of martial arts were popular in Olathe, ranging from Eastern styles from their Asian American population to Western styles from other demographics of the region.
A boy named Marty Armstrong was the son of a karate master, but he wanted nothing to do with it. He eventually grew up into a man and married a woman. In time, they had 2 children. Their elder son was named Bradley Edwin Armstrong, and their younger daughter was named Lisa Armstrong.
Brad wanted to learn karate like his grandfather and spent some time trying to learn, but his grandfather eventually died.
Lisa's mother died while she was very young, and while the children grieved her death, Marty was forever changed. He became violent and unable to take care of Brad and Lisa. Marty made Brad take care of Lisa, but their living situation became increasingly worse. Marty began abusing them.
Brad's friends in school were called Richard Weeks, Tony Angolelli, and Cheeks Gaywood, though they liked to be called Rick, Sticky, and Cheeks. But they were all bullied a lot in school, particularly by Chris Colombo. Brad often intervened to help his friends, but Marty would further abuse Brad if he came home with bruises. Sticky also had an abusive father.
Marty began drinking heavily, physically abusing his children, and raping Lisa. He forbade Lisa from ever leaving her room in an ongoing effort to control her.
So that leads us up to the first game, Lisa the First.
Yeah, which is, it's completely understandable if you don't want to play this one, because...
It's very short. It's a fan, or not a fan game, it's a free RPG Maker game. It's a good game, but it's just a taste of what's going to come.
Yeah, and it's really strange and kind of hard to understand a bit.
Most of it's like a psyche kind of dream sequence.
Yeah.
From Lisa's perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So I forget, how did we exactly find out what Marty's been doing to Lisa? that he was raping her. And
You want me to
abusing.
spoil the game?
No, all right, fine.
I mean, we're doing chronological order like we usually do.
Yeah, all right.
Lisa's life was torture, and her sanity understandably deteriorated as it continued. Marty invaded every part of her psyche until she couldn't think of anything but her terror of him.
Lisa snuck out of the house one night and met a boy that night her age named Bernard. Occasionally, she would sneak out of the house at night when Marty slept to be with him.
Lisa and Bernard became childhood sweethearts, but Lisa had become disturbed. Bernard recognized that and hoped to help her recover. He went along with her twisted ideas of fun more and more until he had let himself get consumed by her trauma.
Oh, yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's really sad. Lisa told Bernard to capture animals and saw off their limbs so that she could see someone other than herself suffer. She began calling him Buzzo, and he liked the nickname.
Like Buzzsaw.
That's creepy.
Yeah. After Buzzo sawed off a puppy's limbs one night, she asked him to use the saw on her face. She hoped that messing her face up would make her so ugly that her father wouldn't want to rape her anymore. Bernard protested at first, but she said to do it if he loved her. So he did.
Yeah, that was one of the worst moments.
Emotional manipulation.
Yeah, you see the conversation, and she tells him to do it to her face.
But you kind of
and that maybe he won't want her anymore.
Yeah, that logic's so twisted, but it makes sense.
Yeah. It didn't work. Marty was outraged, but he continued to abuse her and rape her. When Brad came home from school one day, Marty forced him to drink a bottle of beer, and he forced Brad to rape Lisa alongside him. Are you sure this is when that happens?
Yes.
In the story?
Yes.
That's so sad.
Because, I mean, this is kind of what leads to the thing that happens next.
Oh.
Lisa became suicidal, deciding her only escape was to die. So not long after, she found a rope, tied a noose, and hung herself.
And that's why she's always hung. And that's why she always has a noose around her neck.
And this will affect Brad for the rest of his life. It haunts her because of his complicity in her abuse.
Yep. When Buzzo learned of Lisa's death, he vowed vengeance upon Brad for not stopping Marty, anyone they knew, and mankind itself.
Yeah, so he was very vengeful all around.
Yep.
From Brad to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa's death would forever haunt Brad, along with his complicity in her demise. He left Marty and survived in Olathe on his own, although he did receive support from Rick, Sticky, and Cheeks, his buddies.
Meanwhile, a musician and scientist named Dr. Yado began a private research company called Joy Labs and planned to develop it in Olathe, near the neighborhood where Brad used to live.
When Brad grew up into a man, he started his own dojo to teach martial arts to children. He tried to be a good person, but he was still haunted by his past. Sticky became a drug dealer and often cut Brad deals to get drugs for cheap prices to help him cope.
Rick married a woman and tried to have a normal life, but his wife hated him. She cheated on him and had a child with another man. Even though it was obvious, she never told Rick, and Rick tried to make his broken family work anyway.
One day, Brad concluded his martial arts class early because he was too high to continue. But then he noticed another boy watching the lesson from afar. Brad spoke to the boy named Dustin and told him he could join the class. Dustin was an orphan with a stutter and no money, but Brad said he could join anyway.
Over time, Dustin began idolizing Brad and viewed him as a father figure. Brad essentially adopted him, and Dustin renamed himself Dustin Armstrong, although he preferred being called Dusty. Brad hoped that he could have a second chance at redeeming himself by raising Dusty.
Buzzo joined a ruthless gang in his adolescence and led an attack on Brad's dojo while Brad was away. Dusty was the only one there, and so Buzzo decided to enact his vengeance upon Brad by sawing off Dusty's face. He told Dusty it was for Lisa. That's terrible.
It's really awful. When Brad returned, he rushed towards Dusty and asked him what had happened. Dusty, still bleeding, explained what Buzzo had done and mentioned Lisa. When Dusty asked who Lisa was, Brad simply walked away. Now that Dusty knew about Lisa, Brad refused to acknowledge Dusty's existence or confront his own past.
See, this is part of the reason why I really wanted to do a chronological story of Lisa. Throughout the games, you essentially discover the past of the characters.
Yeah, but it's just in various flashbacks that you find.
Right, so like Brad seems like he's a good guy when you're playing the game, but as you learn more about him, you realize, no, I'm playing as a monster.
Yeah.
That's what Brad does here. He's so unwilling to confront his past that he just ghosts Dustin in real life.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible. Dusty was eventually rushed to a hospital. He recovered, but he was heavily scarred. Still caring about his father, he didn't tell anyone what had happened in an effort to protect Brad, but also inadvertently protecting Buzzo.
Yep. However, Buzzo's vengeance had just begun. By the time he grew up into a man, he studied to become a scientist so that he could join the Joy Labs. He sought out Yato, the mad scientist leading the project, and became his assistant in hopes of ensuring his success in whatever scheme he was planning.
Buzzo helped Yato develop a wonder drug called Joy. They recognized its military use and convinced the United States military to heavily invest in Joy Labs. Buzzo and the other scientists relentlessly tested the effects of Joy on the human body.
While Joy was capable of making the user not feel pain of any sort, in addition to greatly increasing their performance in combat, it had numerous other effects.
Joy was incredibly addictive. After the initial high wore off, the user would go through withdrawal that made them crave more, as well as drastically decreasing their performance in combat. Furthermore, the user would eventually begin to experience psychological delusions that led to the amplification of the user's innermost desires until nothing else mattered to them.
Following the psychological effects, the use of Joy would eventually develop horrendous mutations within the user as well. Once the user was at the end stage of their mutation, they were known as a Joy mutant. The process would always start even with a very low tolerance of Joy. Any user that took a single dose of Joy would eventually, given enough time, become a Joy mutant. Those that gave in to the addiction would become deadlier ones much sooner.
Buzzo and the other scientists categorized all Joy mutants into 4 categories. Some contamination of Joy experiments with wild fish created hybrid fish people Joy mutants that Yato called repulsive waste. Simple-minded and passive users became Joy mutants that Yato called mindless sheep. Simple-minded but aggressive users became Joy mutants that Yato called violent soldiers.
Users that had complexity and passion became Joy mutants that Yato called my favorite. They would utilize their increased strength and distorted bodies to violently achieve their innermost desires until they succeeded or died. They often stretched or bloated to dangerous sizes, and Yato wanted to make use of them.
While the other scientists were testing Joy, Yato used the rest of their funding to develop a destructive bioweapon on his own in secret. His wife also became pregnant around this time.
When Joy Labs presented the research to the military came to the conclusion that Joy was too volatile to be reliably used as a weapon. They wanted to withdraw their funding, and Buzzo told Yato the bad news.
So what do you think so far?
I mean, this is the beginnings of his plan.
And the Joy?
Yeah, that's
We should have
crazy.
given a warning about drug use. Whoops.
Oh, well, honestly,
We said everything.
Yeah.
Yato was... Sorry, what?
I was just going to say, yeah, the idea of this is crazy.
Yato responded by confiding his true plan to Buzzo. He told him about his secret project and how there would be no need to return the military's funding. Yato also developed a system for controlling Joy mutants, utilizing commands he played from his personal trumpet. He was a musician as well.
Yep. Yato told Buzzo he planned to use his newborn daughter, Nancy Yato, in a plan to take control over the world. He fantasized about a world with only a single woman and the power he could have over it. Buzzo, interested in the carnage, promised to stay by Yato's side.
Yado enacted his plan by having Buzzo distribute joy far and wide. Then, Yado unleashed his destructive bioweapon upon the world. No one else knew what it was, nor how it worked, but the effect was immediate and unprecedented.
The ground buckled, and the terrain of places like Olyth changed to be mountainous. The position of the seas changes, and Olyth became a coastal region. Yado had designed the bioweapon to specifically target and destroy any human without a Y chromosome, committing total and complete femicide, aside from his wife and daughter, whom he shielded by some means.
And that catches us up to the event that would become known as the Flash.
Yep.
So that's how, we're not given the exact means by how it happened, because it's the whole premise of the story.
We're not given the details of how every woman died.
Because that's not exactly the point of the story. The point is to see what happens after.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, our cat literally broke out of the room to come see us.
She figured out how to open doors.
Yeah.
Seriously. Okay, so the event became known simply as the Flash, named after the bright flash of light on the day humanity became functionally extinct. Worldwide communication collapsed, and the only survivors of the Flash were male. With only men running the world, civilization collapsed within the next few days, until everyone was fighting amongst each other.
Yep, because that's what happens when you let men rule the world.
That would completely happen.
Yeah.
All of human history has been at the fault of men, so let's see that happen.
Yeah.
I think that's a more realistic portrayal. I mean, you're losing half the population too, sure, but I think things would have gone better if it had been the other way around.
Yeah. Yada's wife and daughter, along with many male to female transgender women around the world, were the only women to survive the Flash. Without any females left in the world, homosexuality flourished in the post-apocalyptic wasteland, because there was essentially no alternative.
For similar reasons, cross-dressers, gay men, and non-cis men were able to form their own communities more freely, though they still faced discrimination, as most men still held on to their heterosexuality. For that reason, issues of dirty magazines with lewd depictions of women began circulating amongst survivors until they had been cemented as a form of currency.
Yeah, not surprising.
Yeah.
Yado told Buzzo to continue distributing joy in the wasteland as much as he could. Yada joined up with his old gang, and he founded the Joy Cult. They wore happy pink masks, sung chants, and distributed joy under the pretense of soothing survivors throughout Olyth.
Dusty used martial arts he learned from Brad to survive in Olyth, but he began to thrive, not just survive. He trained and became known as a fierce warrior. He donned a red skull mask and began calling himself Rando. He recruited men to join in policing Olyth, and his fledgling group became known as Rando's Army. Other survivors in Olyth used various fighting skills to compete for limited resources.
Joy Labs continued to operate for months, but some of the scientists began taking Joy to cope with what they had done. Yada's family lived within the facility, but when his wife learned of the scope of the disastrous state of the world and Yada's involvement in it, she confronted him.
Yado told her that he had no use of her anymore, that he only needed Nancy. His wife suspected he wanted their daughter for pedophilic purposes, but he told her of his plan to use her to spark a war to slowly kill off mankind for his enjoyment. She called him disgusting and he stabbed her, killing her.
Yeah. Yada dropped to Nancy in the wasteland, leaving her near some settlements in Olyth. He abandoned her and waited patiently from afar on a resort island.
Brad, Rick, Sticky, and Cheeks lived in an adobe makeshift house nearby, and Brad started taking joy. He found the baby that Yado had abandoned and brought her back home with him. His friends were shocked to see a living female. They suggested taking her to Rando's army, but Brad refused.
Brad insisted on raising the baby himself. He thought of the baby as a second chance to redeem himself, to make up for the guilt he felt about Lisa. He named the baby Buddy, and he raised her. Brad was her adoptive father, and Rick, Sticky, and Cheeks considered themselves her uncles.
So this is the premise of the Lisa series, that Brad is trying to make up for his thing with Lisa. This Buddy is his second chance, right? Mm-hmm. But if you've been paying attention, this is his second chance.
Yeah.
What about Dusty?
Yeah.
They dug a secret cavern that Buddy used as a room beneath their house. While Brad tried to be a good father at times, he continued to take joy and get high. Brad wouldn't let Buddy outside, so when she grew older, she tried to escape. Brad responded by trying to quit taking joy, sewing a mask, and letting her visit other settlements while he supervised her. Remember, no one can find out that there's a living girl. You don't know how they'll react.
Are you kidding me? If there was only one female left alive, she would be the most, like, I
guess you can guess, okay.
Yeah, she would literally be the person most in danger out of anyone alive.
Yeah, I mean, we already have women outnumbering men, and they're still in more danger than,
Yeah, exactly. Brad began going through withdrawal as he tried to be a good parent, but he became increasingly paranoid. One day, he brought a man he had captured and tied up into Buddy's room. He gave her a knife and guided her into killing him. The next day, he brought a man that wasn't tied up and had her kill him. He continued brutally training her in this way for what he claimed was her own good.
Because it was a violent world and he wanted to prepare her. Mm-hmm. Still very brutal. Mm-hmm. That must have had some terrible effect on her psychology.
Yeah, obviously.
Over time, joy mutants became more and more frequent as more people succumbed to joy. Most were Yado's favorite, and he used his trumpet to subtly manipulate them. Joy Labs collapsed and all of the scientists died or mutated. I want to mention, though, something really clever is the game's soundtrack is actually music being played by Yado in the background.
Yeah. Violent soldiers escaped into the nearby neighborhood ruins. Other people stayed away from those ruins and referred to them as creeps.
Those are the violent type of joy mutants. Mm-hmm. Repulsive waste spread and contaminated other regions of Olathe, but other people called them fishmen. They founded the Fishmen Village and lived in a secluded community where they developed their own language and small society.
Mm-hmm. Most trees died in the wasteland, but one species of tree survived due to a joy-related mutation that replaced its sap with human-like blood. The trees became known as bloodwood trees, and people began disforesting them to make use of them.
When some Native Americans around Olathe discovered the bloodwood trees, they redefined themselves into a unified tribe called the Blood Moon Tribe, and they dedicated themselves to protecting the few remaining bloodwood trees. I guess that's a good way to make your own Native American tribe. Mm-hmm. It would have been nice to see real ones, but...
Yeah. By the time Buddy was at least 10 years old, the chaos in Olathe had settled to some degree as the toughest survivors amassed huge followings. Several factions arose in Olathe that rivaled each other for dominance, and each faction was led by a powerful or charismatic warlord.
These warlords included Big Lincoln, the enigmatic but noble and deadly wolf-masked warrior; Cindy Gallows, a man fond of executions; Dice Mahone, a lover of joy; Lardy Hernandez, an arms dealer who delivered aid to the needy; Mr. Beautiful, a champion of pacifism; Vega Van Dam, a charismatic and handsome man; Buffalo Van Dyke, a lover of football; Han Tsunami, a curt but powerful man; and Hawk Hollywood, a beautiful celebrity.
Rando's army was the most powerful of the factions, and they functioned as regulators that kept peace between all of the factions. They erected the lists, which defined who the largest factions in Olathe, under Rando's protection, were.
Settlements outside of the warlord's gaze remained in various states of anarchy and bloodshed. All survivors were at least over the age of 10 by this time, and joy mutants were steadily increasing in population. And the reason's because, humanity's functionally extinct. No one's being born anymore.
Yep. There was one man who was the closest Olathe would ever see to an altruist, and his name was Terry Rupert Hintz. He called himself Lord of the Tutorial, and many permutations thereof. He left notes with hints on them throughout Olathe, each with a survival tip to help survivors stay alive. Terry's hints weren't appreciated by most people.
While people would read the hints and keep them around, most people found him annoying, so Terry created his own settlement called Land of Hints. He lived there along with only dummies that looked like himself. He pretended it was a thriving town and left hints everywhere as a way to cope from his crippling depression and loneliness.
Yeah.
He was the best character in the game.
I know he was. Later, Terry began wandering Olith in the hopes of finding a friend. He never knew that he did have one real fan who stalked him in secret.
Larry Stentz. He named himself after him. One day, while Brad was high on joy, Rick, Sticky, and Cheeks were babysitting Buddy in his place. They began discussing whether Brad was a good father for Buddy, and they worried about leaving what would soon be the only woman in the world in his care. She's getting older now.
Rick and Sticky decided it would be best for the world to hand Buddy over to Rando, so they reached out to Rando, who sent men in his army to escort them. However, Cheeks didn't want to betray Brad, so Cheeks resisted. A fight broke out, and Cheeks, along with some of Rando's men, were fatally wounded.
Rick, Sticky, and Rando's men left in a hurry to deliver Buddy to a safe location. Rick and Sticky would be inducted into Rando's army for their initiative. While traveling through Olith, Buddy was spotted several times, and rumors spread throughout Olith that a woman had been discovered.
Violence in the region escalated as various gangs and individuals searched for Buddy. Drawings of her were posted in public areas with warnings that she had been spotted, but Rick and Sticky escorted Buddy to safety.
And that leads us to Lisa the Painful, or Lisa the Painful RPG, rather, which is the game in this franchise. The other one's like a prequel, and then there's like an add-on later, but this is a great game. It's even a fun game to play. Yeah. But let's get on with it.
It can be horrifying at times.
Yeah, like you said, very dark story, dark past. But let's have fun in the wasteland, right?
Brad.
Oh, I should mention. You play as Brad, so we might throw in the word you sometimes, but when we say you, we mean Brad.
Yep. Brad awoke from his stupor to find Terry Hintz up a tree, having fled from a wild dog. Brad killed the dog, and Terry decided to join Brad to escort him home.
Brad returned home to find Cheeks and Rando's men dying. Cheeks told him Buddy had been taken. Brad struck out into Olith on a quest to rescue Buddy from her apparent captors. Terry realized what a big deal this was, and decided to back up Brad and tag along with him.
While traveling, Brad and Terry were ambushed by Brad's old bully, Chris, who was now the leader of a small gang called the Gents. He forced Brad to either hand over Terry or all of his possessions, for old time's sake.
So this is the first of many terrible decisions that you have to make in this game. Do you give up your first companion and keep everything you own, or do you give up everything you own and start off the game with absolutely nothing and keep your companion?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So Brad occasionally befriended people who he enlisted to help him on his journey after this, besides Terry. We won't go into all of them right now.
A gang known as the Men's Hair Club claimed to have found the woman and began advertising their capture of her. They allowed anyone to pay to go in the back room and have their way with her. However, it was a scam, and the person they had captured was actually Farty Wesley Hernandez, younger brother of Lardy the Warlord. People violated him anyway instead of admitting they had been duped.
Men.
Yeah. Men are trash.
You want to just keep saying that every time?
That's the catchphrase of this episode.
Yes. And then you have someone going, not all men. Yes, okay, we know. All men, but Terry.
That's funny.
Terry's the one good one. I'm kidding.
That's funny.
Brad arrived to rescue Buddy and defeated the Men's Hair Club. He freed Farty, and in return, Farty joined Brad in his adventure. He also repaired a bridge to allow them to journey further into Olith.
Sticky was more adept at survival than he had let on, but Rick was slowing him down. So Rick and Sticky agreed that Sticky would hurry along to hide Buddy in a cave, leaving Rick behind.
However, Brad caught up to Rick. When Rick tried to run away, Brad chased him and tied him up. Brad interrogated Rick, who tried to explain to Brad why Buddy needed to be protected from him. Brad felt otherwise, that he needed to protect her.
Brad beat Rick up with the spiked club until he gave up Sticky's location. Brad then beat him nearly to death anyway out of joy-induced rage.
One thing that's really clever is...
Sometimes when you're playing as Brad, you literally don't have a choice as to what happens next. You just have to do it and watch what happens.
Right, like you start off beating him to get the info, right? Mm-hmm. But eventually he starts beating him without your control and you just can't stop. Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But furthermore, the dialogue is portrayed in such a way that throughout the game, you're initially on Brad's side. It's like, oh, these men, they're taking her for their own reasons, because you don't yet know Brad's backstory, and you don't yet know what they're up to exactly.
Mm-hmm. You don't know what they're doing with Buddy.
You're put on Brad's side, and they say, like, they're helping her and whatnot. It's very easy to...
assume that they're doing things to her.
You can, like, read between the lines and see pedophilia there, even when it's not there. Just because you become like Brad, you're so paranoid that someone's going to try that. Mm-hmm. Buzzo watched from afar and then ambushed Brad with the help of his joy cult. He forced Brad to either sacrifice his most trusted ally or have his arm amputated.
Yeah.
And this affects you for the game. Your stats get lowered. You can't use any moves that use both arms.
Yeah, and you also increase your need for joy because of the pain.
Soothes the pain. Mm-hmm. Or an ally will die.
Yep.
Like it could be Terry or Farty.
Yeah. While traveling, Brad ran into Rando, who gave him some Rando rations. Rando cried to himself, hidden by his mask, as he and his men let Brad be.
Rando still had a soft spot for Brad. Mm-hmm. Didn't deserve it. Brad and his remaining allies were captured by a gang that forced people to play Russian roulette for sport. Brad and some of his allies survived.
Unless you save scummed like I did.
Cheater.
You end up with over 1,000 mags if you do it.
Okay, whatever.
And I did let a few people die.
But realistically, story-wise, there's no way to get through without some people dying.
Yeah. Brad unless you're really lucky.
1 out of 40,000 chance.
Mm-hmm. Brad encountered a group that really enjoyed live-action role-playing that relived their favorite old show and called themselves the Salvation Rangers. They conformed to all of the stereotypes, such as making their African-American friend be Salvation Black. They didn't have a woman to be Salvation Pink, though, so their lazy friend, Dick Richard Dixon, filled in.
I don't know how I feel about that. Salvation Pink wasn't into role-playing very much, so he quit and joined Brad as an ally. The Salvation Rangers replaced him with Salvation White. They all started taking joy.
Brad stole a bulldozer and bulldozed through a construction site to get to the other side. In doing so, he killed many people, including Horace Finkel, the worst bulldozer driver ever.
A region of Olathe was known simply as Wally's, named after the old fast food restaurant. A man who used to work as a mascot and dressed up as Wally continued the functions of Wally's.
People who lived in Wally's would wish for a blessing from God at the drive-thru speaker, and Wally would prepare the meal and drop it from high on a cliff top where he worked. However, he had no burger meat, and so he used human meat instead.
So there were people worshipping a fast food mascot as God because, resources were so scarce and just, McDonald's, Wally's, whatever, was falling from the sky. Mm-hmm. They didn't know it was made with human meat.
Yeah.
It was genuinely hilarious. God, can I have some chicken nuggets and a small fry?
No, he asked for a big burger and a large Coke and then a nuggets meal for his grandpa.
Yeah, they only served one miracle a day.
Did they?
Yeah. Brad fought his way to the top of the cliff and killed Wally, ending the region's religion and cannibalistic food supply.
And this was a very creepy. Yeah, it was very creepy.
Because the mascot helmet had like a voice box that would do a creepy laugh.
Yeah. And you also had to kill his mascot, the Nuggy. Yeah. Sticky told Buddy to wait in the cave while he sought out Rando to coordinate with him, but after Sticky left, Brad finally caught up to Buddy. Buddy believed Sticky and wanted nothing to do with Brad, whom she really disliked. Brad didn't give her a choice and made her accompany him.
However, Buzzo ambushed Brad and Buddy once they exited the cave. Buzzo had one of his men hit Buddy and threatened to keep doing it unless Brad took more joy. Buzzo wished to accelerate Brad's downfall by forcing him to consume joy.
Brad overdosed and passed out. Suddenly, Sticky and Rando's army ambushed the Joy Cult. The two factions fought, and Sticky rescued Buddy and escaped with Rando's army. The Joy Cult was scattered, and Buzzo retreated.
Brad and his surviving allies searched for Buddy once again.
Chris ambushed Brad once more, but Chris left the gents to fight him. Brad killed them.
Yeah, Chris, his old bully from school, killed his gang, so Chris is the only survivor now. Sticky was trying to escort Buddy to safety, but Buddy didn't appreciate being controlled. She took advantage of his wounds and got away from him. Brad soon caught up to Sticky, who was bleeding from the injuries he had in the fight with the Joy Cult.
Sticky tried to call Brad out and accused him of being a hypocrite. Sticky told Brad he had been abused as a child too, and he said that Brad was just using Buddy to assuage his guilt. He said Buddy could bring life back to humanity.
Yeah, see, this is interesting because, you're playing as Brad. By this point, you get the idea that Brad's been abused, right? Mm-hmm. And Sticky's calling you out on that. Like, you're not the only person in the world who's been abused. Mm-hmm. It doesn't give you the right to destroy humanity.
Yep.
Brad was becoming increasingly paranoid, misinterpreted Sticky's remarks about Buddy as implying that Sticky had raped Buddy. Again, reading between the lines, right? Mm-hmm. Brad prepared to murder Sticky. But Rick, still injured and heavily scarred, intervened to save Sticky. He begged Brad to spare them.
Buzzo.
And this is another one of the big choices you have. Mm-hmm. You can choose to spare them.
Yeah.
They're beaten and wounded. Brad will actually listen this time and not keep beating them.
Yeah.
So you can kill them right now and murder them, or spare them. Either way.
Mm-hmm. Buzzo watched all of that and then ambushed Brad to torment him some more. He forced Brad to either sacrifice his 3 allies that were currently accompanying him or allow Buzzo to cut off one of Buddy's nipples.
Yeah, so he doesn't care about hurting other people as long as it hurts Brad as well. Mm-hmm. Killing your 3 allies, that means you have to essentially start your team over at that point. That's a serious decision.
Yep.
And he says that she has too. She's the last woman in the world. You really want to take that risk? It's a hard decision.
Yeah.
So after Brad made his decision, Buzzo's rage still hadn't been satisfied. He forced Brad to either hand over every survival possession, weapon, and piece of clothing, or have his other arm amputated.
Yep.
And you'd be surprised, by this point in the game, a lot of people, you did, Kira, choose to have the other arm amputated because you need those equipment. And those items.
Yeah, especially at that point. Buddy, meanwhile, stole a boat from Tardy Hernandez and escaped to a deserted island. Brad spoke to Tardy, who told him they could follow her. Brad gathered supplies to make a new boat. Brad would stop at nothing to do that.
So Brad's really going off the deep end now. Mm-hmm. Brad took down one of the warlords, Han Tsunami, and his whole clan just to take his fan.
To make the boat, yeah. Brad encountered Chris one more time. Chris inferred his gang was dead, and he challenged Brad to a race. Brad found a motorcycle and raced against Chris, who rode his pet deer named Spaghetti into the sunset. When they reached the end, Chris apologized for bullying Brad and shot Spaghetti in the head. Then he shot himself.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Brad killed all of the remaining members of the Blood Moon tribe just to take the wood from the very last Bloodwood tree.
Mm-hmm. And you have no choice at this point. If you don't get these items, you don't progress the game.
Yeah, you have to.
So you either stop playing the game or do these terrible things.
But, by this point, you've done so many bad things, you might not even be questioning it anymore.
Oh, yeah, I suppose
you
might
right. Just be like, well, this is where I'm supposed to go.
Mm-hmm. Brad defeated the followers of another warlord, Buffalo Van Dyke, but Buffalo surrendered and joined Brad as an ally. He gave Brad his personal toolbox.
Brad encountered the Salvation Rangers one last time. Red, white, and yellow congealed into a contorted Joy Mutant. Blue turned into a Joy Mutant as well and murdered Black. And so Brad killed Blue. Green alone escaped. He dropped the persona and returned to being known by his real name, Thule.
Brad took down another warlord, Hawk Hollywood, who was in the process of becoming a Joy Mutant, just to take his mint-condition cloth.
Brad returned to Tardy with the supplies. If Sticky survives, then at this point he patches himself up and ambushes Brad again and begged him to surrender, and then fights to the death. Okay, so I was going to talk about Brad's potential allies by this point, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip this. Maybe we can come back to it at the end of the episode.
All right.
Because I want to talk about all the possible allies you can get, but not all of them do you have to get. Some of them have some harder requirements than others. So we'll get back to that about some interesting characters, but let's continue with the story.
Brad and Tardy spent the night building the boat while Brad's allies rested. Once the boat was finished in the early morning, Brad insisted that he and Tardy leave for the deserted island before his allies wake up.
Once they arrived, Tardy said he was excited to rape the woman with Brad, and so Brad killed Tardy. His motives were terrible.
Yep. As soon as he got to the island, he's like, all right, where is she? He expected Brad to give her to him. Brad then discovered that Marty had been surviving.
Marty, his father.
Yep. Brad then discovered that Marty had been surviving all this time into his old age in a cave on the deserted island. He had been taking care of Buddy since she had discovered him on the island. Brad was furious with Marty, but Marty begged forgiveness, claiming that he had changed and been a good father to Buddy.
Marty was a reflection of Brad, but Brad loathed him. Brad started beating Marty, but Marty barely fought back. Eventually, Buddy tried to intervene, but Brad's rage didn't stop. He beat her too until she got out of his way. His joy-addled mind took over, and he murdered Marty until he was paced on the floor. Buddy fled in terror, taking the boat. So Marty's doing the same thing Brad's doing. But by this point, you might empathize with Brad, but it's hypocritical if you're not going to give that same courtesy to Marty.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk about this later on, but he tells you what happens while she's with him. All right. When Brad came back to his senses, he tried to follow Buddy once more. He used Tardy's body as a float and followed Buddy into Rando Land, the headquarters of Rando's army.
Buddy in her escape was unaccompanied. Sticky's abusive father was still alive as well, and he ambushed Buddy to take advantage of her vulnerable state. He thrived in the wasteland by using metal claws attached to his hands, which he used to tear the left side of Buddy's face and left eye.
Brad caught up.
Mutilating her.
Yeah, which is terrible. She loses an eye after this. Well, at least you can assume that by the fact that she's bandaged.
See, he's the man that Brad feared would happen, but she only got into the situation because Brad killed everyone else that was trying to protect her.
Yep. Brad caught up to them and heard Sticky's father claiming he had made his mark upon history. Brad killed him and then gave Buddy his poncho. Buddy responded by calling Brad a monster before running away from him again.
Brad chased Buddy down, and Buddy found herself between Brad and Rando's army, which had been mobilized in full. Buddy decided to take her chances with Rando's army instead of Brad, and she accepted their protection.
Brad's three most trusted allies caught up to Brad and begged him to stop and let Buddy go. Brad felt betrayed but refused to give in. He killed all three of them.
I don't think this can be overstated. The penultimate boss here is your own teammates.
Yep.
Brad fought his way through Rando's army, killing the dozens of soldiers that were thrown his way. His mutation began to reveal itself, and he tore them to shreds. Many in Rando's army tried to escape, but Brad didn't leave a single one alive.
Brad, filled with arrows, spears, and blood, inched towards Rando himself, who told Buddy to run. Brad fought Rando, but now Brad was using dirty tricks while Rando used the martial arts Brad had taught him. Brad defeated Rando, but Rando was tough enough to remain in one piece and survive, though broken.
Brad inched towards Buddy, asked her if he had done the right thing, and asked her to hug him. He then lost consciousness for some time. You get the choice as Buddy on whether or not to hug him. I think it's better.
Yeah,
He doesn't deserve it, but hug.
Buddy began to fend for herself. She found a sword and gathered supplies, trying to survive on her own. She knew what Joy did, but she wasn't able to cope without taking some. She also wore Brad's old poncho.
Olathe entered a state of chaos as the surviving warlords tried to continue operations without Rando's army, which was now completely defunct.
Everyone who had allied Brad eventually died or went missing.
So now we're on the finale, Lisa the Joyful. Let's keep going.
All right.
Buzzo met with Yado to discuss next steps. Yado said he was going to bring his next plan into action by taking advantage of the ever-increasing number of Joy Mutants. He said Rando seemed fine and could take care of Buddy, though he said he would watch her from afar until her purpose was complete.
Yado told Buzzo to take his pet, referring to Brad, and leave. Yado also said that their arrangement had concluded, and they agreed to leave the other be. Yado then began using his trumpet to incite the Joy Mutants into escalating attacks, and the people of Olathe found themselves struggling to survive.
Buzzo abandoned the Joy Cult, which now faced danger from both Joy Mutants and vengeful people. Without Buzzo, they began advocating against using Joy among each other. Thule, formerly known as Green, let them hide in the basement of his house.
Brad woke up as a fully fallen Joy Mutant who thought of nothing but making things right with Lisa, and so he inched towards Buddy, who had settled nearby. Buddy fought Brad off, but Buzzo appeared. He tied up Brad and saved Buddy. He dragged Brad away to continue his torment and left Buddy alone.
And when we say mutant, like, he's bloated, his hair is like legs. It's weird. It's gross.
Yeah.
Bolo Bugatici was a defector from Rando's army who considered himself an opportunist. He formed a gang from the other defectors of Rando's army and ambushed Buddy with the goal of raping her.
Rando intervened, but his fierce reputation had been ruined. Bolo wasn't scared of Rando, who was still recuperating. Yado helped by summoning his favorite Joy Mutant called Sweetheart to scatter Bolo's gang.
Men are trash.
Yup.
Buddy and Rando escaped. Rando took Buddy to a few of his friends that were still loyal, but his friends made a serious error. They took Rando while he was asleep and kidnapped Buddy. One of them, Dale, tried to rape Buddy, but the others killed Dale, not tolerating his behavior. Men are trash.
Buddy understandably didn't trust any of them. She broke free of their control and killed all of them. When Rando came to her, she asked if they were the friends he mentioned. He lied and said he didn't know them.
He should have told the truth. Buddy saw the list of all the warlords of Olathe and decided she wanted to be on the top. Rando tried to talk her out of it, but Buddy did not answer, or did not waver.
Buddy kept taking Joy and killed anyone who dared to control her or tell her what to do in any way. The only person she trusted was her brother, Rando. Rando was reticent to help her the entire time, but he decided it was more important to stay with her for the sake of humanity.
Rando is up there with Terry.
Yeah, he's one of the best characters in the game.
Rando and Terry for life.
Yeah.
They should get married.
I ship it.
Yeah. Buddy, with Rando's help, went off in a killing spree, killing Lardy Fernandez, followed by Vega Van Dam, and then the pacifist Mr. Beautiful. He doesn't even fight back for most of it. And yeah, Buddy, she wants power. She wants control of her own life.
She doesn't want to be scared.
Yeah, it's kind of a retaliation to everything she went through with Brad.
Yeah, and I can understand how she feels, because as a woman living in that world, what else would you want to do than kill anyone who has the power enough to take you and control you and make you their slave?
Right, but you can see her taking that to its extreme.
Well, yeah, because she's on Joy and she has a one-track mind right now.
Yep.
Rando couldn't stand to let Buddy kill everyone who helped Olathe stay a peaceful place. Joy Mutants,
relatively.
Yeah. Joy Mutants and torn bodies became more and more common as Order decayed. While Buddy slept one night, he ran away to warn the other warlords.
Buddy continued her killing spree alone and killed Dice Mahone, who had just become a Joy Mutant himself.
Cindy Gallows was Buddy's next target. However, he led his followers on a crusade against the Joy Mutants for mankind's survival. However, they were outnumbered. One of Cindy's followers, Louis, formed a mutant cult that believed the Joy Mutants were more deserving of inheriting the world than men, because men are trash.
They were right? Ish. The mutant cult ambushed and hanged Cindy when Buddy showed up. She killed Louis, who had become a Joy Mutant himself, and the rest of the cult. Cindy was very tough, though, and was still alive. He fought Buddy from the gallows, but she killed him.
Buddy then killed the strongest man in all of Olith, Big Lincoln, finally cementing her place on top of the list.
Rando was captured and beaten by Bolo. Bolo then hung Rando with barbed wire as a trap for Buddy. Buddy found it and she grabbed the barbed wire, holding onto it, not wanting Rando to die. However, Bolo ambushed her and tried to rape her. Now this is where you actually get a choice in the game. You can hold on or let go. But one way or another, both Bolo and Rando die. On one hand, you can drop Rando, killing him, and then you kill Bolo in revenge. On the other hand, you hold on to Rando and Bolo tries to rape you. It's left ambiguous whether he succeeded. But in that case, Sweetheart immediately murders Bolo.
Yeah.
But Rando will end up dying anyway because Buddy will slit his throat.
Yeah.
Because he will reveal that he lied to her earlier, and she will kill him out of vengeance. So they both end up dead no matter what you choose. Buddy is bloodthirsty.
Yeah. We did this in the wrong order, didn't we? We killed Cindy Gallows. We killed Big Lincoln before Cindy Gallows.
You have options of who you kill in what order.
Yeah, all right. Now that the warlords were all dead, Yada stepped out into the world and ceased hiding. He had an army of surviving Joy Mutants and began to get comfortable as ruler of the known world.
Buddy appeared before Yado to oppose him, and Yado was surprised she hadn't become a Joy Mutant yet. He lamented that he would have to kill her if she wouldn't leave. She refused, so he sent Sweetheart to kill her.
Buzzo, meanwhile, had been taking Joy, and his desire to torture Brad had been fulfilled. He still had what remained of Brad, but he had a crisis of conscience. Even though his thoughts were tormented by his memory of Lisa, he intervened in Buddy's battle with Sweetheart. He told Buddy to go after Yada while he fought Sweetheart.
Buddy then fought Yado and his horde of Joy Mutants. Yado used his trumpet to try to control Buddy, but she resisted enough to kill his entire horde of Joy Mutants.
Buddy took Yada's Joy vaccine and then interrogated Yado until he revealed he was her father. Buzzo threw a blade and killed Yado.
Buzzo, however, had only barely won the fight against Sweetheart. He lost a few limbs and came back to Buddy. He told her that Brad was her father, not Yado. He then turned into a Joy Mutant, and Buddy had to kill him.
Buddy hallucinated that Rando and Brad wanted her to stay and discard reality, and contemplated whether she wanted to take the Joy vaccine or let the mutation run its course, deciding the fate of humanity.
So there's basically two endings you can get, right? If you take the Joy vaccine...
You said earlier that she took his Joy vaccine. She didn't take it.
No, I mean like she grabbed it. She grabbed it.
Yeah, you're right. She grabbed it.
At this point, she decides whether to take it. If she takes it, she won't turn into a Joy Mutant. She will eventually meet a man and have a baby and raise the baby. For some reason, the man's not there. And she uses the trumpet to keep Brad in her life, even though he's a Joy Mutant. He's kind of like a pet.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a happy ending. It's hopeful that humanity can begin.
Although she needs to have a girl for humanity to continue.
The key is having lots of babies.
Yep.
And then if you don't take the Joy vaccine, the mutation takes its course. Buddy becomes a Joy Mutant. And there are two versions of this ending. One, she won't have a baby, and the other one, she does. And if she does, I guess she
must have had it before she mutated.
Well, no, there's no point at which she gets raped. I mean, there's the whole thing with Bolo, but that's...
ambiguous enough that you can...
It's ambiguous, but also, depending on how you play the game, it might not happen.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
So she must have had a baby later. She was also, only 13. This is when she's older, like 18 or so.
Uh-huh. All right.
So the Joy Mutant Buddy, she must have raped a man's body and had a baby?
I don't know.
She also kills Brad in that ending.
Yeah.
I prefer the good ending.
Yeah.
Humanity continues. Either way, humanity continues. It's just whether it's familiar or mutated. So that's the end of Lisa.
Yeah.
Really great story, I think.
Yeah, it really is. It manages to handle such harsh subjects with actual care and some it just handles it really well, because it's that some other media makes fun of it or whatever, doesn't handle it nicely.
Makes fun of what?
Like hard subjects like rape or abuse.
Yeah.
But
whenever the bad stuff happens, it doesn't try to make a joke of it.
It just shows the bleak reality that
Right.
these characters are living.
But also, the game does well with having humor in between those moments. It's like
Yeah.
it's
it
like
has like
it's like
Fallout-esque humor.
well, it's like real life, where real life can be really dark and heavy, but you try to make the best of it, and that can lead to like dark humor sometimes. But it doesn't ever take away from the bleakness of it. Now, before we end the episode, we need to at least give a cursory explanation of all the allies.
All right. Why didn't you just go through these?
Okay, but you offer your opinions when you want to, okay?
All right.
All right. So the allies are the best part of this game. I liked playing the game with like on hard mode with no saves, essentially. Anytime an ally died, I just kept going on the game. A lot of them died. A lot of them.
Yeah.
It was very hard for me because I had to keep replacing people.
Yep.
And many of the Joy Mutants have insta-kill moves that will kill your party members. Not like faint KO. They will die and you can't use them anymore.
Yep.
Anyway, we have... Oh, I forgot to mention, this game is really good with racial diversity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is.
And it'll show. You have Ajit Mandeep, the poke guy. He will only joy you if you are not a drug addict, if you don't take joy.
I thought he joined me anyway, and I took joy.
Well, you must have been off it for a while.
Oh, yeah, I probably was.
There's Barry Geese Thompson, the rhyming bird guy.
He was a serial killer who left rhymes for police to find him, but he was so bad at making these rhymes that it misled them, and so he never got caught.
Beastborn, the wild guy. He tames squirrels. Birdie Nash Hall, the super drunk guy. He's very useful for oiling up enemies,
Yeah.
which you can then set them on fire. Bovine Rotunda Wyatt, the weird guy. He's so sad. His brother's dead. He just wants to hear music.
Oh, yeah, that guy. I like that guy.
Buckets, the mysterious guy. The hardest companion to get in the game.
Because you can only get him if you win all rounds of Russian roulette.
Buffalo Van Dyke, the American guy who likes football. Carp, the fish guy.
Who just has a fish head.
He used to be a superhero that would protect children, but in the wasteland he decided to abandon the children. You can actually find the children in the game, and if you do, they die.
Yeah, I didn't interact with them at all.
He also likes the fishmen because of the fish head. Clint Bart Olympic, the cool dude guy, who's the most beautiful and handsome man in the wasteland, and it's completely gone to his head.
Yep.
Chris John Ladati, the mini swords guy. He's really good with swords, and the only way to get him to join him
is by holding his
boyfriend hostage.
Yeah.
And he's such a nice guy. He's like, okay, I'll work for you. Dave Sonny Blackwolf, the powerful clothesline guy. He has a wolf pelt that he thinks is alive.
Yeah.
Dick Richards Dixon, the party guy. He's
the Pink Ranger.
Pink Ranger, yeah. Fardy Wesley Hernandez, the violated guy.
He has a depression status the entire game.
It never wears off for him.
Yeah, and he has a special truck moves that are really good.
Yeah, he's part of the Hernandez family. Frank Fly Minetti, the bug guy. He dresses up as a bug.
You can only get him if you win all the kart races.
Garth, the art guy. He draws nude pictures, which disturbs people.
Yep.
Harvey Alabaster, the lawyer fish guy. He's the only fishman companion you can get.
Because he's the only one who speaks English.
But he's really good at restraining orders from enemies. Jack, the magic guy. He's a magician. Lincoln Tiger Man Townsend, the spear guy. He's a fighter that dresses up as a tiger.
He's tough. Mad Dog, the nipple guy.
I think he might be a parody of the real life person after that name.
Oh.
He's an idiot.
Yeah.
Nern Zhao Guan, the annoying guy, he's the one who fills you in with most of the backstory about the Flash.
Yeah.
He talks and talks and talks and is a huge misogynist.
Yeah.
Olan Don Hoyt, the drunk guy, he abandoned his children. Ollie Olive Nichols, the sweaty guy, he's a failed businessman. Otto Shocklord Shipman, the face-first guy, he's a washed-up wrestler. He only has one move in the game, it's very good, and it's falling on his face.
Yep.
Percy Pete Monsoon, the poop guy, who cares? Queen Diane Roger, the lady guy, a transgender character, sort of cross-dresser, transgender. It's
difficult.
I wish it was explicitly transgender, but she's awesome.
Yeah.
Rage Ironhead, the headbutt guy, a luchador. Rooster Dean Coleman, the red hair guy. You can only get him if you kidnap his chicken. RT, the dirtbag guy, probably the most problematic character in the entire game because even though he's colored green, it seems like it's supposed to just be an African-American homeless man.
Yeah, and you can only get him if you give him Duffy.
So I don't like that. At least they colored him green. That's something, I guess. Terry Rupert Hintz, the Hint guy, amazing. And then Yazan Barghouti, the cat guy who just wants to find a home for his kitty.
Yeah, he's cool. I like him.
Okay, so that's everything. We got to really call it a day here, guys.
Yep.
But this has been Lisa. We have a Patreon. Please check it out for rewards and stuff. Help. You can vote on episodes. If you want to hear something, go do it. We don't have many people, so your vote will really matter.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Kyle.
I'm Kira.
Bye.
Bye.